Do you know the difference between something that's uncomfortable, unfamiliar, or unsafe? Or does your brain perceive those three things as the same experience? Today's discussion is going to really dive into why it is important to know the difference amongst those three things and how knowing that difference can change your experiences and change your life. So, I am Stephanie Singleton. Glad to be here with you all and our wonderful empowerment psychologist, Dr. Rosina Bakari, who always puts us on the right track with things. How are you doing, Dr. Bakari?
Hello, I am doing wonderful. Such an important discussion today, as always.
Yeah, as always, very important discussion. So as we are getting started, get your friends, call your friends, hit that like button, give us a heart, hey, send us all of that good energy because we're ready to get down right now. So let's just jump into it, Dr. Bakari. Hey, what's the difference between these three? Uncomfortable, unsafe, and unfamiliar.
So, we have all sorts of experiences. Our brain is always judging, always giving us feedback based on what it believes is in our best interest in the world. Theoretically speaking, that's the brain's job. It gets that confused a lot. And you have to watch some of the other podcasts to get more detailed about all the funky things that our brain does for us. So confusing was familiar, was unfamiliar, was uncomfortable, and was unsafe is just one of the ways the brain doesn't always get it right. And we end up having experiences that we did not intend to call forth in our lives. So the difference, something that is uncomfortable is just outside of what makes us tick. So we may not prefer that. I'm uncomfortable when it's less than 80 degrees outside. I'm uncomfortable, right? And so what's uncomfortable has a lot of variation. What is uncomfortable for you, Dr. Singleton, is very different than what's uncomfortable for me. Now, what's unfamiliar just means that even if it is in my best interest or good for me, or I might like it, it's unfamiliar. And because it's unfamiliar, my brain is going to do certain things with it. One, it often makes it makes me pay more attention to it just because it's unfamiliar. It may make me reject it because it's unfamiliar. It may drive me toward it because it's new, unfamiliar. And so it depends on the patterns that are already in place, but it doesn't see unfamiliar necessarily as the same way that it experiences discomfort. And then unsafe is what we all tend to share. And there's some variations on that, of course. If I don't know how to swim, 6 feet of water can be dangerous, is unsafe for me. It may not be unsafe for you if you know how to swim, right? And so even that has some variation. But generally speaking, what we do know is if you don't know how to swim, you tend not to, it tends not to be safe to go in water that's over your head. So we can agree with those kind of things. So safety has more commonality in it from person to person than does what's unsafe, then does what's unfamiliar or what's uncomfortable. So something that is unsafe is dangerous. We tend to know that. But here's the tricky part. Our brain, depending on what our experiences have been, our brain, if we experience dysregulation, if we've experienced some sort of abuse, some sort of trauma like grief and loss, our brain has these unresolved issues. When we have deep patterned unresolved issues, and when we say we're feeling stuck, sometimes what that means is that our brain is not differentiating between what's unsafe what's unfamiliar, and what's uncomfortable.
Yeah, I like what you said there about stuck, because you hear people say that all the time. Oh my God, I'm just stuck. I'm just stuck. I'm in a rut. I don't know how to get out. Yeah, so that's what's happening when we're in that position. We're not differentiating.
Sometimes that's not always what's happening, but that's one scenario. That's one question I would ask people to look at if they're feeling stuck. As you're evaluating these things, are you distinguishing between what's unsafe, what's uncomfortable, and what's unfamiliar? Or are you restricting yourself because your brain sees those things as the same? Right? Sometimes I've even done it. Here's a simple, like, we tend to think that it's uncomfortable to go out after dark. Some people believe that it's uncomfortable to go out after dark. Is that, and so if you believe that, then going out after dark also becomes unfamiliar and uncomfortable. So if I'm in a scenario where I have to go out after dark and it's in my best interest, I may not go because my brain is now blending those things and I can't distinguish. If I'm good, if my brain is good at distinguishing between those things, it may tell me generally that may not be the case, or in this case, you can do something different. It's okay to break the rule or whatever. You're going to start processing something different, and your brain is going to say, okay, it's uncomfortable and it's unfamiliar because I tend not to go out after dark, but I can go out after dark, and that could be okay. I'm not in immediate danger just because it's dark outside. Being dark outside is not what puts me in danger. I'm able to process through all those other things. Where am I going? Who am I going with? How far am I going? And I can process all the complexities of the circumstance. But if my brain does not distinguish between those three things because of trauma, grief, loss, getting stuck, emotions unaddressed or lodged within us, it just immediately responds to the circumstances. It does not have the bandwidth to ask those deeper questions about what's familiar or what's comfortable or what's safe. It's all no, no, no.
Yeah, it just sitting here listening to you talk, it does all blend together, right? Because I could say, and I think a lot of people do this because I've done this a lot, where I'm uncomfortable about something because it's unfamiliar to me, and because it's unfamiliar to me, I don't feel safe. And I'll give you an example. Many years ago, I had this car accident, and the accident was my fault, right? Okay, so thank God nobody got hurt, nobody got killed, but it totaled out my car and the other person's car. I mean, it was a really bad accident. And even though I made it a point, right, to immediately get another car so I could get behind the wheel so I would not have the fear of driving again, that accident still affected me because I never dealt with it. And what used to happen was, anytime I had to drive someplace that was more than maybe 2 miles, I was definitely uncomfortable. If I had to get on the highway, I was totally uncomfortable and felt totally unsafe because that accident was always planned. Like, oh my God, I can get into another accident. And I remember I was going to visit a friend up in Indianapolis, right? And I was living like 50 miles from Indianapolis. And I was like, okay. They were like, you want me to come get you? And I was like, no, I'm gonna drive up there, right? And that was my first time driving up there, so it was unfamiliar. And because I was uncomfortable with driving, and I was unfamiliar, all of that just blended together for me. And I just felt like, oh my God, this is unsafe. And I had to pull over on the shoulder a few times just to like get myself together, because the anxiety and everything, but I made it. And then after a while of just constantly doing it, then it kind of came down like, no, It's not that it's unsafe. I'm just really uncomfortable because after a while I got familiar with the route, right? So but there used to be a time if the route changed, if it was a detour, I would freak out because it's unfamiliar. Automatically, it's unsafe. I don't have control, right? I know the route. Boom, I can just go the route no matter what it is, whether it's the longest route, no matter what. But I had to have so many things in place, right, for me to feel in control, because that's where I felt my comfort, right? That's where I felt comfortable. If I could get all them ducks lined up, and I'm here to tell y'all, I don't own no ducks, and y'all probably don't own no ducks either. So, the whole point is that I can see how we all just get all of that we don't distinguish at all.
Right. And so when we learn to do that, just as you did, you're saying, I eventually had to learn to do that, and then I can process better. When we learn to do that, and we can learn, we can retrain our brains to make those distinctions, we have so much more flexibility in our lives. We don't have to shrink our lives. It's funny that you use the driving thing too, because even now, and I talked about going out in the dark, the older I get, the worse my vision is. I can't anyway. That's just how it is. So I don't I don't see well at night behind the wheel of a car. So as they say, I drive by faith, not by sight. And so and because I'm used to doing this thing with my brain, I become okay driving at night because I am constantly reminding myself that I am uncomfortable behind the wheel of a car at night. I am not unsafe. So I can get in that car when I need to. Again, I don't do it very often, but sometimes you got to go out at night. And when I do, I literally remind myself, you're uncomfortable, you're not unsafe, because I know the things that make me safer. I drive slower. Sometimes I take the streets instead of the highway. I take the well-lit roads. And so I know that I can do all these things to shift what's uncomfortable about driving at night. And so I don't get stuck that, oh, it's unsafe. No, I can't go because it's unsafe, which again is what a lot of people do. I've seen other people do that too, is that, oh, I just don't do that anymore. I can't do that anymore. It's not safe. Is it unsafe, or did it just become uncomfortable because something in you shift? For me, my eyesight shift. For you, the accident shift. So we're constantly undergoing change. And if our brains don't catch up with the changes that we experience, then again, we can easily start to get stuck.
Okay, so having said that, what are some of the behaviors that people exhibit, right, when they really have these three confused?
So one is easy to become, as we say sometimes, a control freak, right? Because our brain is grappling for safety first, right? And so it can go in hyper mode of looking for or targeting what's wrong, what's wrong, what's wrong. And so it's easy to start focusing on what is wrong, what's out of your control. So if you do that, then you end up living in an existence of lack, for one, right? I lack something. Something's missing. And so it's easy to get into this general, something must be wrong with me, or the world is not okay. And you don't have to live that way. I'm very aware that a lot of people live that way. I am here to testify that you do not have to live that way. You can live with the general sense that the world is full of love and safety, but that takes some work. It takes some work to believe in yourself and believe in the world and believe and understand that because I believe in myself, the world will reflect that love experience back to me, but I have to give it to create it, right? It's kind of like a bicycle. If you don't pedal, you ain't going nowhere. right? And so it's about you creating those experiences versus you only judging the experience.
So okay, there was a time where I was a real control freak. Some people probably would say you still are, whatever. Um, and so to hear you say that that represents lack, right? In my mind, when I was there, I didn't see the lack, right? I didn't see the lack, and I get what you said about judging things, right? I didn't see the lack because I had my perception about what everything that needed to be in place, what needed to happen, how it needed to happen, right? Who needed to do these things that needed to happen. So okay, so now I get the lack. I get the lack because yeah, and everything had to be just so, and had to be just the right person who was doing whatever they had to do it this particular way, this way, all of this for me to, and that was because I didn't feel safe. I didn't feel
Right. And so you're
because
trying to
of that
manipulate the, sorry, you're trying to manipulate other people, things, circumstances, instead of growing inside out. How can I change me? How can I show up different? How can I reposition myself? That's where all the power lies. But sometimes when you try and talk to people about that, they perceive it as victimization. Why should I change? Because not because you the only one that's wrong, but because that's where your power lies. We give away so much power with our resistance to interchange.
Yeah, no, and like I said, I could see that because yeah, like you said, you do make your world small because you just, that whole thing of not differentiating being uncomfortable or unfamiliar as opposed to unsafe. That whole thing does keep you in the bubble, right? Because there's just certain people, you just gonna push a whole lot of things away. You're not going to explore, right? You're not going to take chances. You're not just going to put yourself out there, because it's like
And
it's
you create a
unsafe.
lot of conflict. You
Yeah.
also create a lot of conflict because anything that's uncomfortable between you and me, baby, it's a problem. And you the problem. So it also creates a lot of conflict in relationships
Mm.
because every time someone says something to you that's uncomfortable, Lord knows unfamiliar, then you feel emotionally unsafe in the same way that you experience the world as physically unsafe.
So let's talk about that since you brought up emotions, right? Yeah, which we were talking about anyway, about how this also creates what they call emotional dysregulation.
It absolutely can, right? One, because it creates conflict. And when you're in a constant mode of conflict, you're going to have dysregulation, right? It's going to be difficult to get a handle of it because you're creating experiences that you don't want, that don't benefit you in a healthy way. So it's easier, you're more vulnerable to being dysregulated when you don't distinguish between those things because you're going on hyper mode where where it's the judgment. I see it. I see the wrongdoing. I see the that. Everything goes in a negative category, and you don't even count the experiences that go in your favor because you're not paying attention. You don't look at those. So it feels like you always say that. You always do that. Feels that way because that's what you're always counting. You only count that. And so it can so that person can begin to feel emotionally unsafe, right? And uncomfortable when that's not necessarily the case.
So, how do we identify people who are emotionally dysregulated? Um, just for people out there who really don't know, what does that look like? How are people moving through the world when that's happening?
I think it's a matter. I don't think I don't think it's necessary to identify it in other people. I think it's necessary to identify it in yourself, not in other people, because you don't get to tell someone that they're dysregulated.
Yeah.
But I think for you, if you're looking at your own experience, if you cannot predict how you are going to feel today, all day long, and that's constant most days, then that's a state of dysregulation. If everything that comes up in my environment can sway how I feel every 5 minutes, then that's dysregulation. You know, someone walks in a room, my mood changes. Someone leaves a room, my mood changes. Someone takes too long, the bus takes too long to come, my mood changes. Everything changes. Someone says my dress is nice, my mood changes, right? So it's the constant judging of everything in a very personal way, as if it's personally directed toward me as a sign of my worth or value or how I should be, feel, or show up. So that's why I'm constantly changing.
Okay, I'm glad you said that. I remember years ago, listening to Les Brown, the motivator. Shout out to Les Brown, honey, the motivator.
Shout out to Les Brown.
Les Brown, honey. Les Brown is the truth. We all have greatness within us. Okay. But I remember this one talk that he gave, and he said, either you're going to be a thermometer or you're going to be a thermostat. He was
That's
like,
right.
if you're going to be a thermometer, everything that you're going to react to everything that happens. That's just how, like you're talking about with the emotional dysregulation. He was like, but what you want to be is a thermostat. You want to set what the heck your day gonna look like, what your emotions gonna look like, and you roll with that. So
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's really great. And how does that help us make better decisions when we make these distinctions between unfamiliar and discomfort?
Right, because if I'm clear, when I label properly, then it allows me to better predict what an outcome is going to be when I label properly. But when I mislabel you or the circumstance or the situation, I'm more likely to be off in my prediction about what's going to happen within the next 24 hours, 24 days, or 24 years. So I may not be as good with my decision making as I would otherwise. And so it's real important for us to know that it is not unsafe to move away from your family. Some people don't want to do that, so they don't take the job. But if that feels unsafe, right? Mm-hmm. And it's really just unfamiliar. You don't even know it's uncomfortable because you haven't tried it. What you do know is that it's unfamiliar because everybody in your family all live in the same town.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, no, and so you assume that it's also uncomfortable.
Yeah, that's absolutely the truth. And then if our emotions are just all over the place, then you make a decision based on how you feel in that minute.
Right? Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So
this is some work. This is some work. And I can see how people who have been traumatized, especially in their childhood, how everything kind of feels unsafe. Everything. Right?
Be amazed if we really thought about it logically. We'd be amazed at how safe we are in the world. That's why sometimes people say, I don't trust people. Well, actually, you do. Think about driving your car. You are constantly in trust mode that people are going to stop for red lights. You're trusting that no one's going to run off and harm you at any second. So 90% of the time, you really are in trust mode. You just don't recognize it because the fish doesn't recognize water. 90% of the time, probably, we are in trust mode. So what happens, which is why it's so important for us to address these unresolved stuff. What happens is that you also hold part of your brain these memories, grand memories of mistrust and discomfort that can be triggered at any moment. So while it's true that you are in unrecognized trust mode 90% of the time, it could also be true that there are 1,000 things that can trigger the mistrust. Right. And so, but if you went minute by minute in every day, you spend we actually spend most of our time in trust mode. We don't have a choice. That's human nature. Otherwise, we'd be looking at everybody's side eye. Although we do, we do. But if you really thought about it, mostly our brain is not. I know it may, so it may feel that way because we also can do a lot of judging and looking around, but that's why our mind categorizes things for us so that they can become familiar. So you're sitting at the bus stop with strangers, that begins to be a familiar experience for you because you've done it for the last umpteen years. But if your car just broke down yesterday and this is your first time sitting at the bus stop, that's going to feel unfamiliar, probably uncomfortable.
Right, but it's not unsafe. Right.
Right. And that's one of the reasons why we like to live our lives with common experiences, patterned experiences, so that our brain can keep telling us what's familiar and what's comfortable. So if people are struggling with this, I want people to take a minute to notice randomly when they feel safe. Start to notice randomly. When you go into the grocery store, do you feel safe? Why? Because something is familiar, because you know where things are. You're not going in there wondering if someone's going to come in and rob the place. Most of the time we are in trust mode. So we can capture that intentionally and carry it with us during those times where our mistrust gets triggered. And we can remind ourselves through affirmation, whatever, that my body is safe, I'm in a safe space. Then you can allow some of that to wash away and wash over you. The world is a safe place. I believe that. In spite of all the violence, if you looked at everybody in the world, it's a minuscule amount.
Yeah, I remember days where I used to have to keep reminding myself, I am safe. Hey, no shame in my game. I had to do that. I really did have to do that. Like, okay, no, this is, not to have my emotions be like, oh, because I used to be the most hypervigilant person in the world. Okay, I was your queen. I'm the queen of I was the queen of a whole lot of things, but I definitely was the queen of that hypervigilant. I just didn't know how to relax. My whole body would always be. I didn't even realize how I was wearing my shoulders for earrings. I'm telling you, I just always seriously, I was just always just waiting for the next shoe to fall. I don't know. I think I had told you this story. One of my besties, shout out to Carol Johnson. One of my besties said to me one day, she was like, "You always look under a rock." Always. She was like, everything is good, everything is okay. Like, you always looking for a rock. She said, and I'm bringing you a damn rock so that you can just get up every morning and you can pick it up and look at it and put it down and then go about your business. Ooh, I done went down, y'all. I'm back. Okay. And she showed up did. Yes, she did. She crazy. Okay, I'm still going here, but she crazy. Okay. But I understood what she was trying.
You slipping, Dr. Singleton. You slipping.
Girl, I'm slipping back. I'm slipping under that rock, okay? But she damn sure did she did bring a rock to my house. Yes, she did. Yeah. A big rock. And she sat it on my table. She said, now pick this up every morning and look under it and then go about your day. Because that's really where I was. And that's what I had to get in my mind and just say a lot of times when I would feel that trigger going, okay, I'm safe. And I would have to really in my mind go over all the reasons why I was safe. This wasn't happening. Nobody was bothering me. Nobody was paying attention to me. You know, I could just walk into a room and just feel unsafe. But you know, again, that had a lot to do with some childhood trauma. But still, like you say, the work still needs to be done if you want to get out here and really live.
Right.
Yeah, and
Right.
just I stayed in survival mode. That's the best way to describe that. I just stayed in survival mode. It wasn't even about living. It every day was, how can I get through this? How can I get through this and still be safe? And like you said, I was safe the whole time.
You were safe the whole
The whole time.
time.
The
You
whole
were
time.
safe the whole time. That's so important for people to remember. You're safe the whole time. So here are some things to think about. Someone not liking you does not make you unsafe. Someone saying no to you does not make you unsafe, and it does not make them an unsafe person. Someone not offering you a job does not make you unsafe. These common experiences often trigger in us a feeling of discomfort and unsafe. That's not what's happening. And it's so important for us to get that to connect to our brain so we can stop connecting those things to safety. Rejection is not unsafe. Rejection is a part of life. It's a part of life. Sometimes we are the rejected, and sometimes we are the rejector, unless we're not. So if you don't know how to reject, then you also don't know how to be rejected. So that's a whole nother issue. Maybe that's the next episode.
Right. Oh, yeah. Woo. Rejection.
If you don't know how to say no, you also don't know how to receive no. So those things may feel unsafe. Your brain may perceive those things as unsafe. They're not unsafe. They're often not even unfamiliar, but they remain uncomfortable. And so now the brain flips it to, oh, this is unsafe, or that's an unsafe person, or this is an unsafe situation. It was a no. It's just a no.
Yeah. And you know, I remember I think people know this. I used to volunteer on the National Suicide Lifeline, right? And you know, you know, you would get calls sometimes, and you could see the conflation of these three things, right? And a lot of times it was somebody didn't want to go someplace, or because, you know, they just felt it was going to be unsafe, or they had a loved one that went someplace, said, hey, I'm going to go here and I'm going to hang out, you know, whatever, I'm going to Coachella or whatever it is. And the other person was freaking out because it was like, well, anything could happen, you know, this could happen, that could happen, that could happen, that could happen. And, you know, and you just sit there with, they just going to a concert. You know, it was just that type
right.
of. But again, when you have a lot of trauma, you at the unresolved, right? Trauma, everything is unsafe for not just you, for other people. So then you play your own trauma out on other people.
That's right. Yeah. I did that with my daughter. Sometimes it works out. I mean, if I can do it, you know, she announced that she was going to Bali for her 30th birthday. I said, "You going where? With who? By yourself?" Oh, no, you're not. Not as long as you got a mama, you ain't going to Bali. So I packed up bought my ticket, packed up my stuff, and I went to Bali with her. We had a great time. And it was a good experience. But the bottom line was that I could not disassociate my sense of desire for my child to be safe from that experience, right? And luckily I didn't have to. I guess I would have gotten some resolve somehow, but it's like I chose to go out of my way, spend money and time, and of course is well worth it. But that was a response to my sense of safety, not hers. She was totally willing to go by herself. Right.
Right. No, that's the truth. And I did the same thing, with my daughter. And finally, it got to a point where my daughter was like, Ma, I'm growing. And it took a lot for her to say that. No. It really did. It took a lot. And I realized how much it took for her to say that finally to me, like, Ma, like this, like this, you gotta let go. But again,
Yeah.
it was my stuff, right? It was my, like, how could you go and do these things? It's gonna be unsafe. And I remember she was going with on a trip to Ghana with the school, with the university, right? It was a group of them going. Woo, I was freaked out. I was freaked out about that, and shortly after that, that's what she had when she came, that's what she had to say. Wow, look, I'm going, and then I had to look at my own stuff. Like, why am I just I'm holding like that? I'm just holding and holding and holding. And how that really, I'm glad she said that, because had she not, that would have really probably damaged our relationship. Because then it would have been like, oh my God, I can't wait to get away from this woman. She choking me to death,
Right,
choking the life
right,
out of me. Yeah.
right. Yeah.
So, anywho, people, since we've gone through all of that, okay, yes, look out for that next video coming out about how to deal with rejection. Okay, yeah, like, okay, look out for that one. So, Dr. Bakari, do you want to leave us with any words of encouragement and last words of wisdom?
Yes, and that is that safety really does start within. A feeling of safety starts internally. We can't control what's safe in the world. I mean, we can. I don't walk around with my money in my hand. I mean, we all can agree on what safety looks like at the basic level, right? I lock my doors at night so I don't invite recklessness. At the same time, safety starts within, with me knowing that I am cared for and loved by the universe, but it's taken me a long time to get there. That's a lot of internal work. And so some of the work that we keep trying to do externally by adding more locks is really internal work that we need to do. We don't need one more lock on our home or our hearts. It's the internal work that we have to do. One of my favorite mantras that I do is, may my heart remain open. Let my heart remain open no matter what happens. Let my heart remain open. May my heart be more open today than it was yesterday. The desire for an open heart is the only thing that can compete with the desire for safety.